Upsets will happen in the playoffs. That's common, especially in the first weekend. But you've got to be very careful not to think that every game is an upset narrative. Sometimes when somebody's screaming in your face and telling you got to do something, you got to listen to them. And this is Pocket Protection in association with TDR, brought to you by Bet99 Sportsbook. Every game starts at Bet99.com. We are responsible gambling. I'm Ryan Doyle. That is Steve Budin. Man, we made it here. Yep.
Not a lot to say about our last college pick.
But I don't know what you're talking about.
But I can tell you it teaches us a lesson. You have a good season. We had a great college season.
Yeah.
And you don't want to, put all your whole bankroll in jeopardy going into the last game based on emotion.
Yeah, I mean, if we want, we can just unpack it very quickly. Like, what the hell happened on Monday night? It was just, it was a buzzsaw, wasn't it? It was just a team amped up, hyped up, prepared against a team that was seemingly out of their depth.
A lot of games you have previous history, and you can look at how they played against each other in the past. And when you don't, some teams just line up really well against other teams for whatever reason. Your strengths play well against the other team's weaknesses. Your experience. You never know how these are kids. These aren't men. They look like men, right? But they're kids, and how they're going to react to the lime. And how they're going to react to the big game. And, I just think all those factors factor in. And listen, I wish we had the luxury of analyzing every game after it's played. We do a whole lot better.
We do a whole lot better. And now let me just say this. National championship aside, Georgia back-to-back natties, fantastic stuff if you're a Bulldogs fan, fantastic stuff if you love UGA. But Stetson Bennett, old man Stetson Bennett, what is he, like 35, 40? He's got Social Security coming, I think, in the next couple of years.
I think he gets into a movie for $4. But anyway, that's another story.
Right? That man is the most punchable, I think maybe the most punchable person, most punchable human in sports. He was throwing touchdowns, and I'm like, okay, yeah, you're good, but I still want to punch you in the face because of that smirk you've got on your face. And I think if he translates that to the NFL, he's going to be in the lines of Johnny Manziel as opposed to in the lines of some of the better quarterbacks like Josh Allen and whatnot that we've seen that have come out of university to be great pros.
John Elway used to be like that, great quarterback, but that he would throw an interception and they'd show a picture of him and he's smiling because he's got these big teeth in his mouth. And it's not even that he was trying to smile. He was just making room for his teeth. You know what I mean? And but it looked like he was smiling, and you got all this money bet on Denver, and the guy just threw an interception, and there he is smiling. And you're like, is this guy dumping the game? Like, what's going on here? And you want to punch him in the face.
Yeah, hey,
which
John,
I'd have to get up on a stepladder to do, but that's another story.
Hey, John, what the fuck are you smiling about? You just cost me $10,000.
I can't tell you how many times I said that. That same exact thing.
All right, let's talk about the NFL, the pros. Let's first of all, before we get into the games, what we're going to do here today is we're going to get into 3 games. We'll preview the first 2 Saturday games and then the first one on Sunday because we do have a Monday game, which is kind of weird, but we'll break those down in the next show. The first 2 Saturday games and the Sunday one you'll get here on this episode. Let's talk about playoff betting, though. Do you change your strategy? Do you change your outlook? Are there certain things that now you're looking at a little differently? Because we're in a rare situation where a lot of these teams have played one another. You want to talk about, pedigree and a roadmap? There's a lot of history here between a lot of these teams. What changes for you?
Biggest problem for gamblers with betting is always around excitement and emotion, right? You always, when you add, that's why Vegas goes to great lengths to create an atmosphere of excitement and emotion via pumped up alcohol, pumped up lighting, sexy girls everywhere. There's a reason why your blackjack dealer looks like she belongs on a 1990s Victoria's Secret cover. They go to great lengths to pump that emotion because they know that when gamblers are fueled with emotion and excitement, they make bad decisions. And when gamblers make bad decisions, it's only good for one person, and that's the book or the house in case of a casino. So I think one of the biggest mistakes gamblers make is that they buy into this being special. It's not any more special than your week 2 cover was when you came in on the back door and scored a last-minute touchdown to get the win. Remember how that felt? It doesn't get better than that, and that was week 2. So to think that because now this is a more exciting time for the players, that somehow that translates to a more exciting time for the gamblers. Therein lies your big mistake. You're thinking with the wrong head, and you're going to get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, man, I want to echo what you said because, man, that's some great wisdom. That is some great sage advice here because take away the packaging. Take away all of the lights that the networks are going to provide you, all of the previews you're going to see on your TV because they do up the ante. Network television ups the ante. They're going to tell, the big game's coming. San Francisco, Seattle, San Francisco. You're going to be hitting the head with that for the next 4 or 5 days to the point where you come to kickoff and you're electric just like the guys running out of the tunnel. That should not affect the way you bet the game. Steve is absolutely right. Strip down that emotion, look at the two teams on a piece of paper, and ask yourself the question I've been imploring you all year. What would the line be if you set it for this game? Take all of that playoff stuff out of it and look at these two teams for what they are, not with the sexy dealer, as Steve puts it, and all the lights and the glitz of Vegas, just the stripped down bare tax of these two teams. I think that's got to be where your handicap starts.
Yeah, no matter what happens, if you're showing 16 and the dealer's got a 10 up, you have to hit. That's just the way it works, especially when you're working against 8 decks in a shuffle with no count. And it's no different in football. This is just another game. Look at both sides. Look at the line. And if you're, God willing, if you've been following our advice and you're up in your bankroll going into the playoffs, there's no rule that says you have to put all of those winnings at risk, at least in week 1 of the playoffs. Likewise, if you're down a decent amount and now it's the playoffs, there's no rule that says you have to win all that money back that took you all season long to lose in a few weeks. Take this game as just another week. Make sure you know what your bankroll is. Use that bankroll. Stay within your head. Enjoy it. It is about fun, and there's nothing fun about losing more than you can afford to lose. So bet within your head. Go after it and get them, but it's just another game.
Are you the kind of guy who mouths off at a blackjack table? Because I am the kind of guy where somebody is sitting there and they're riding that 6 and the dealer's got 10 and the guy's just refusing to hit. And I'm thinking to myself, what do you assume? Do you understand the rules of this game? You know that this dealer has to get to 17, is showing a 10, likely has 18 or better. What do you think your 6 is going to gain out of this entire process? I get lippy. I get a little chippy at the blackjack table.
Yeah, I'm a crap player, at the wrong table. You know what I mean? Because I am a dice guy, so I'm a yeller, I'm a screamer. You know what I mean? But I do also believe in karma and quantum gambling, and I don't like to mouth off to fellow gamblers because they are putting their money at risk. And I also believe, unlike other people that will say, "Oh my God, that person made the wrong move, and then I busted. It was his fault." Buddy, there's 8 decks in an automatic shuffler. You know what I mean? There's nothing related. It's like saying 2 blacks came on the roulette wheel. Let me bet red now. What that guy does only affects his hand. It doesn't affect yours. He can make a bad move into giving you a 6 when you have 15. He can make a bad move into giving you a 10 when you have 15. There's no way to know that other than to go through those motions. So don't blame another gambler for throwing the shoe off by playing it wrong. The only one he's hurting is himself. He's paying for that right. So I do yell and scream at a blackjack table. I've often been asked to go back to craps where I belong, but I try not to get too vindictive when it comes to battling other gamblers.
All right, that just makes me a shitty human. Let's move on. Let's move on into the big games. We've set the table for you. You know what? Why don't we take a quick break? Let's do this because these games are. I want to make sure we give ample time and import to each of these games. We've done a deep dive on each of them for you. We're going to give you our best bets and our picks. We will do that as Pocket Protection continues.
As a world champion, when I walked out of the tunnel, I knew I prepared to win. I still do today. Every game starts at Bet99.net.
Welcome to Bet99.net, Canada's home for all your favorite free-to-play casino games, slots, live dealer tables, and progressive jackpots, including Mega Moolah. At Bet99.net, you could be a winner today.
Welcome back to Pocket Protection in association with TDR, brought to you by Bet99 Sportsbook. Every game starts at Bet99.com. We are responsible gambling. Let's get into the big games of the weekend. We're going to do the Saturday slate and the first game on Sunday. So we start with the San Francisco 49ers minus 9.5 against Seattle. 42.5 the total. Steve, Seattle limped into this playoff picture. Overtime win against the Rams. That game could have gone either way. They were banging field goals off the post to get into the postseason. Took them a while to get there, but they did. And their gift, I suppose, their reward is the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, and I can't help but feel, for better or for worse, that nobody was happier than the Niners that Seattle beat the Rams in OT last Sunday. Now they get to play the Seahawks rather than the Lions, who would have been a very tough out. So Seattle slips in as the final NFC playoff seed, but history suggests these 7th seeds, they tend to be in way over their heads and underqualified. We saw it last year with the Eagles and the Steelers, who were both outclassed, as were the Bears in 2020. That being said, this has been one of Petey Carroll's best coaching jobs to date, and that's saying a lot because he's a hell of a coach. He took a team in a rebuild stage after dealing with the post-Russell Wilson apocalypse over there in Seattle. He took them into the playoffs, and what a ride it's been. But folks, the ride ends here. The Niners, they're just the hottest team in the NFL, period. 10 wins on the spin, the best defense in the league, an offense that's now got most of its weapons back in place too. And this Brock Purdy, what a story this is, and well known by now. No other rookie quarterback has won his first 5 NFL starts since Big Ben did it with Pittsburgh. Yeah. I think that was back in 2004. If anything, to me, Purdy looks better than Jimmy G. Purdy's passed for 13 touchdowns, just 3 picks since he entered the lineup. That's not bad at all. And meanwhile, this Nick Bosa-led defense, they shut down Seattle in both regular season games. They gave up just 1 touchdown. They were always in Geno's face. They sacked him 5 times in those 2 games. So tell me, why would this game be any different here? It won't be. All the fundamental edges and all the fundamental advantages still rest with San Fran. And meanwhile, Geno and the Seahawks, their offense, they're playing like crap headed into this game. So I'm sorry, Petey. Great job this season. You deserve a Coach of the Year nod. But now go home and enjoy yourself because the Niners win this one big. Lay the wood.
Yeah, and listen, got a couple things on this, and I'm going to go back to what we said earlier when it comes to the hype of the NFL playoffs and betting and strategy. First off, upsets will happen in the playoffs. That's common, especially in the first weekend. But you've got to be very careful not to think that every game is an upset narrative. Sometimes when somebody's screaming in your face and telling you you got to do something, you got to listen to them. And in this game, I think it's imperative to realize the San Francisco 49ers might be the only team in the NFL that's got Pro Bowlers in every stage and every facet of the game. Special teams, defense, offense. The Bills and the Eagles don't have that. The Chiefs don't have that. The Bengals don't have that. This team is for real. They are special. And I think when you look at the other side of the ball, I think, Geno Smith and company, they showed you what they were. They had their backs against the wall on the weekend. Yeah, they won, but it was ugly. Not a lot of points scored in that game. It was really gritty and scrappy. The Niners play almost clean football. Brock Purdy, as Steve alluded to, this kid is a kid who doesn't make mistakes. They're very few and far between, and that kind of quarterback in this kind of defense can get you pretty far. The other thing I want to say here, take a look, because if you like San Francisco, I would bet them today. At 9.5, I think that might be some of the best value out there that you're going to get. I would be stunned. I would be absolutely stunned if this game didn't close well above the 10-point mark. If you like the Niners, the second you hear us talking about it, go and lay the money down. Go and lay that wood, as Steve put it, because I don't think you're getting 9.5 anywhere else past, let's say, Friday. I think that this game is value-laden when it comes to San Francisco 49ers, and I think that number is absolutely legitimate because I would have this somewhere in the 12, 13-point range. 9.5, to me, Steve, is a gift. Am I crazy?
No, and postseason trends don't necessarily follow the regular season trends. We happen to have, a regular season that brought us a lot of dogs. The dogs won at an accelerated rate over the regular season. But that doesn't mean that every favorite isn't going to be the right play in the postseason, or every dog. It just doesn't matter. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, you have to take the postseason and the games here on their own, at their own face value, and not bring the baggage of the regular season along with you to the airport. I think that's super important. I believe in most cases, especially in the playoffs where there's not a lot of games on the board and the concentration of betting is much, much higher, that if you're going to be betting the favorite, bet them early. They're only going to go up. If you're going to bet the underdogs, wait till late. You're only going to get the benefit of extra points if you do that. This game is a great indication of that, and I agree with you 100%.
All right, let's move on then to the Chargers, -1 at the Jags. 47.5 is the total here. You've got the road team as the favorite. I think a lot of hype around Justin Herbert and the Chargers, somewhat the Chargers defense, although if you want an upset narrative, I've heard a lot of people talk about this game. People are all over Jacksonville. I don't know, at a line of 1, is it really an upset?
Right.
The Jags have been rolling and going into the postseason. They're finding their groove. I think it's well documented now that Trevor Lawrence was the victim of Urban Meyer and that whole clusterfuck last year. I think he's rolling with a good coach, and I think this is a team destined for good things in the future. Will it be this weekend?
Well, here's the disclaimer, right? Regular season results aren't always a foolproof indicator for playoff rematches. And the Chargers can hold on to that hope because they lost 38-10 at home back on September 25th to the best team in Florida, the Jags. They scored 7 on 11 attempts, the Jaguars did. Trevor Lawrence had 3 touchdown passes, outplayed Justin Herbert. The Jags' defensive front limited the Bolts to just 26 yards rushing in that one, all of this, while the Jacksonville runners ran for 151 yards in that contest. I mean, all of that equated to a 28-point romp. And now, that being said, the Jaguars didn't win again after that until November 6th. But then they won 7 of their last 9, 5 in a row to finish the season, as teams going into the playoffs want to finish the season, right, playing their best ball headed into the playoffs. Can't help but be reminded of the Bengals run last year whenever I watch the Jaguars run this year and what they're doing this season. So I'm all over the Jaguars. I'm gonna take this one.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Jags. I think there's a lot of nice pieces here. I think their defense probably doesn't get enough credit. I think the Chargers look a little shaky to me.
Right.
Off the top of the season, they were in sort of a weird free fall. They managed to get the plane back in control, but I'm not sure I'm confident enough in them as a road team here. Going against, as you called them, the best team in Florida. I like the Jaguars and what Trevor Lawrence has got going on. I don't think this team is going to go deep, but I certainly think the Jaguars do have a massive chance to pull what is a light upset to me. I'm surprised that this isn't going to be more of a pick 'em. I'm assuming, given all of the people I've heard talk about this, the public is going to definitely fade the Chargers, ride the Jags. This line is probably going to go the other way. Do you think I'm right about that?
I do. I think 1 and Pick'em are virtually the same line anyway. Yeah. But, I do see it shifting over unless people just aren't used to seeing these Jaguars in the playoffs. You know what I mean? And from a brand weakness standpoint, that may give us a little value here with the Jaguars. But all 3 Florida teams are in the playoffs, so to say they're the best team in Florida actually means something, and they are.
Let me ask, because you said something interesting there. You said -1 and the pick'em are relatively the same thing, or virtually the same thing. Are you somebody who maybe looks past getting the point if you like the underdog and take them on the money line, or vice versa when it comes to the favorite?
I don't have a problem with that. I just don't see it when a game is won, you don't really get a big money line price. It's not like you're going to be at plus 140. You know what I mean? You're going to be at 05 or 1 plus 110 or, there's not, in there doesn't lie the crux of the money you make. If you're doing that all season long, maybe that's a strategy. In one game, I'm never worried about, I'll take, now's the time when I never buy points, and I'm not suggesting you buy a point in this game, but I'm very much against paying a premium for extra points and giving the bookies extra vig. 100%. If you feel like a team needs extra points, maybe you should be looking at the other side. You know what I mean? That's always been my philosophy. But now when the games are sparse and the wins are more important, if I've got a little bankroll with me from the season, I'll take a little extra insurance, call up Geico, grab a point here and there if I think it can help.
$20 or less will get you car insurance. What? Let's end with Buffalo minus 9.5 versus Miami. The third in this, I guess this is now a trilogy between these two teams. 46.5 the total. A lot of questions for Miami at quarterback. And I think, Steve, that's ultimately why this line is so high.
Yeah, and first and foremost, it's amazing to witness prayers being answered in this world of arguments, hyperbole, and strife. It appears to me as nothing less than a miracle that Damar Hamlin survived, a cardiac arrest Monday Night Football. Can't talk enough about it. A game that he woke up 72 hours later and asked, did we win? Right? So while we're in prayer mode, let's also recognize the many that don't have the availability of top-notch medical teams from the NFL on the sidelines, ready to jump into action every time their life is in danger. And I'm talking about Max Sorensen, 17 years old, high school basketball player from Gillette, Wyoming, died suddenly a week ago. I'm talking about Old Dominion sophomore player Emo Essien, who abruptly collapsed while playing defense in last Saturday's game. And, of course, I'm talking about 18-year-old woman who was playing basketball in the Bahamas in perfect condition and dropped, and the Air Force Academy offensive lineman and cadet Hunter Brown, who died suddenly while walking to class, and the list goes on and on and on. And it only confirms the miracle of Damar Hamlin and how great the staff in the NFL and the doctors and the whole medical team around the players really are and the job that they do. And if this all seems normal to you, just keep your heads in the sand. It's all good. And look, I'm emotional about it. It's emotional.
Yeah, for sure.
And this game is going to be emotionally charged. So maybe that's a good thing because it kind of gets you in the head of what's going on with the players, just like Buffalo was in the New England game. And look how they came out and played in that game. Meanwhile, Miami's going to have their hands full. And it's true. Miami's been sometimes a sticky adversary for the Bills. They're 5-4-1 against the spread in the last 10 meetings. And that being said, the Bills, they own Miami. They're 8-2 straight up. They're 5-0 straight up in the last 5 at home against the Dolphins. And Miami could very well be without Tua, who's been on and off concussion protocol all season long, kind of like my first girlfriend in high school, but that's another story. Look, you're going to have like Skylar Thompson or Teddy Bridgewater at the wheel in the winter conditions in Buffalo. Either way, that's bad news for the Dolphins. Bridgewater's fresh off an injury, completing under 50% of his passes on the season. He's got a 4-4 touchdown to interception ratio the last 5 games. Thompson's a rookie, picked up in the 7th round. He's completed just over 50% of his passes. He's got a 1-3 touchdown to interception ratio. None of this is good enough. Meanwhile, the Bills have Allen. 4,283 yards passing on the season, 35 touchdown passes, 761 yards rushing, 7 touchdown runs. We're talking the men and the boys here. Whenever you've got the men versus the boys, I'll take the men. Give me the Bills here. Easy double-digit winner.
Yeah, listen, I'm not putting my money behind anybody named Skylar unless I'm going to a tarot card reading. What?
It sounds like they're supposed to say Skylar main stage. You know what I mean? Like you always hear main stage after Skylar. Like, everybody, Skylar's on the main stage.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Skylar. Like that's the kind of feel that Skylar has. I would say that this is a pendulum game for me. And I'm going to put this on the record because, maybe it's my Buffalo Bills helmet behind me and my Bills Mafia fandom that's clouding my judgment here, but I will not be betting this game. I would not suggest or tell anybody to bet this game because I think this is one of these games where it could be weird. It could be the Bills go out to a massive lead, the Dolphins come back, they kind of linger around, maybe they get a backdoor. 9.5 does not feel comfortable for me. And maybe you're saying, Ryan, what's wrong with you? You don't have any stones? Why are you putting your you-know-what on the table? Typically during the season, I have done that. This is a lean-away game for me. If I was forced to take it, I would likely take the Dolphins plus the 9.5 points. I don't like it. I'm not comfortable with it. But there are some points of the Bills' defense that I just don't love. That secondary, it is depleted. There have been injuries on the secondary. You saw against New England, sure, the Bills had a lot of interceptions, but there were also a lot of chunk plays that Mac Jones was getting against the Bills' defense, and those were all top-notch players that were in. These weren't reserves. The Bills were fighting for something. They ultimately won the game. But the Patriots hung around for the better part of 3.5 quarters in that game, despite two runbacks for a touchdown on a kick return. For me, I think Miami is the play. Again, I wouldn't touch it with any of my money, but it's the Bills' defense that really worries me, and it will worry me throughout the rest of this playoff.
I think there's something to say, too, about being such a big Bills fan and not really needing the value of a wager for the game. And knowing yourself, I think that's a smart play. And if you say to yourself, well, maybe, I like this game a little bit, but there's better value on the card. And that's another thing that we talk about when we talk about the playoffs. You don't have to bet every game on the board just because your opportunities to bet are starting to dwindle as the season ends. This is an important factor as well. You still have to be a hunter for value. And if a game doesn't present enough value, you must have the power to pass. March Madness is coming up, baseball playoffs and NBA playoffs in the summer, and then baseball playoffs in the early winter, and then football's back again. Betting never ends. Your opportunity never ends. That's an illusion. Don't buy into the illusion.
Yeah, it's interesting. I keep a spreadsheet, and I recommend doing that as well to track everything, to track who I've wagered on. The least amount of money that's come out of my bankroll has been towards the Buffalo Bills, any game they've played. I just don't touch it.
Makes sense.
Yep. I just rather have the emotion of the win. Sometimes that's gratifying. Steve, it's always gratifying to have a conversation with you. Thank you, my friend.
You got it, my brother. Let's get some winners going.
Absolutely. Pocket Protection in association with TDR, brought to you by Bet99 Sportsbook. Every game starts at Bet99.com. We are responsible gambling.